Welcome to You Belong in the Room, a podcast from Powership. This show explores the decisions that shape women's lives, from career and money to relationships and health. Through thoughtful conversations with experts and leaders, we're unpacking the systems that shape those decisions and giving women the insight and language to participate more confidently in the rooms where those decisions are made. Thank you for joining us. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult a qualified professional for your specific circumstances. Carly, I am so lucky today to be joined by Carly Flam, who has been part of Powership from the very beginning. She is both someone who professionally is right where we need a lot of information, advice and insight, and personally is passionate about the objective of empowering women. You've been part of Powership from the beginning as someone who deeply believes in the mission. But today you're here in your professional role as a divorce lawyer, or someone who I like to refer to as an expert in relationship health.
That's always our funny joke, that I'm your friendly neighborhood divorce attorney who's going to come and talk about healthy relationships and healthy marriages.
Yes, and at the same time, how better to learn what to do and not to do from having seen all the ways it can go both right and wrong, and giving some practical tips so that we can organize ourselves and prepare ourselves for a wonderful relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes there's this impression that as the divorce attorney, I can be scary because I'm talking about the worst case scenario and because I'm coming from the dark side of, marriages that end in the worst. Yes. And unfortunately, I know that there are people who break up and just negotiate their divorces between them and work really well as co-parents post-divorce. I do have a lot of thoughts and opinions about what a healthy partnership looks like, because for me, that's really what a healthy marriage is. It's a partnership.
Absolutely. And I always like to take this positive spin because ideally we do work on our marriages and have them be as wonderfully fulfilling and successful as possible. It takes work no matter what. Sometimes ending it is better, right?
I think sometimes.
That said, you've developed through all of your experience a really honed, honest view of what a healthy relationship and a good marriage could look like. Could we just start by help us understand what are some of your telltale signs of this relationship can be successful versus perhaps a situation where it isn't?
So, I mean, everybody's definition of what a good marriage looks like might be different. But for me personally, and from my professional and lived experience, I would say that I think that a healthy relationship is one that is a real partnership. And that partnership for me means that your partners that not necessarily are doing 50-50 equal of every single task, but that there's a division of labor in your couple that makes sense, that plays to each of your strengths, but where you are a unit and you're making decisions together. And there's no areas or topics, whether it be finances, parenting, decisions in the home, that are only being made by one spouse, and that there is, always coming back to the partnership of setting goals together and discussing together what decisions are going to be made. I think it's healthy for one person maybe to run point on certain tasks. You know, if one spouse is, you know, really the person who has a lot of background and knowledge with respect to finance, I don't think it's weird that that person is leading decision-making about finance. But I still think partnership means that both spouses have a seat at the table when it comes to decision-making.
Well, you are definitely speaking my language, Carly. And I think people who are listening might feel like they have room to improve in this definition of a healthy marriage. I know, if I think of every marriage that I know, I think there's always room to improve at being partners. And hopefully that's something that's more enjoyable and less daunting.
Yeah.
Or doesn't feel off limits, because it will also evolve, right? As our families, our life circumstances change, I think the dynamics evolve, and we need to be at the table together, supporting one another and having these important conversations.
I agree. I think that looks different for different couples.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is a lot of gender norms that are working against us, you know, that we at least have to allow into the discussion and into the conversation. I think that there are a lot of women who don't necessarily work outside of the home, but who are sort of not participating in certain decision making because there's an assumption that their husband, who is a professional or in business, has more knowledge or is better placed to make decisions about the family finances than they are. And I think that for a lot of women, that can be very comforting, this feeling of being taken care of, and that there's somebody who is looking out for them and looking out for their family's interest. And obviously, the divorce lawyer's perspective is sometimes that doesn't always work out when we put our blind faith in somebody else. But not even speaking of it from like a negative place of divorce, I challenge that paradigm, because I think there are so many women that I've worked with or that I know who don't work outside of the home, who are so brilliant, so well educated, so good at research, so rational in their decision making, and they have so much to offer in these discussions in terms of a different perspective. And they have such a huge stake in this kind of decision making. And I think that it's one thing to sort of say, I feel really taken care of by my husband. I don't really want to go to the bank. I don't really want to sit in the meetings with the accountant or the financial planner. And I understand that. But what I think is missing from that is he can run point, but you still have to participate in the conversations and understand what decisions are being made.
It's funny because I almost think we need a tally for how many times I'm going to bring up strangers in this conversation.
The book Strangers?
Yes, because it's such a powerful illustration of what you're describing going wrong. Or many, many, many women, I think, can relate and learn from that situation. But the other 2 points I wanted to make were in response to what you're saying. Number one is many women, or probably I almost want to say everyone, as we're generalizing, already deals with money. We're already making financial decisions. So even in a situation where we do feel protected and we aren't the ones who are responsible for or managing finances, what we're not doing is connecting the financial decisions that we're already making to the fact that they relate to the other ones.
I agree.
And there's more meaning when we have knowledge of what's happening as a whole. And then the second point is the idea of unpaid labor or work. Like work in the home is work.
Yeah, I don't want to minimize even for 1 second, or be seen to be minimizing even for 1 second, the incredible importance of the unpaid labor that non-working spouses are doing inside of the home. And that's definitely something that I see in my practice a lot. You know, what I find astonishing is that it's often post-separation. that men in particular sort of understand the value of all of the work that their stay-at-home spouse was doing during the relationship. In Quebec, it's very normative. In Canada, really, it's very normative for fathers to have 50% parenting time with their children and have sort of a either 1 week kind of a schedule, or at least a 50-50 schedule. And if the husband was the breadwinner and is still working full time, all of a sudden it becomes super, super clear during their parenting time, the pickups and drop-offs, the preparation of the lunches, making sure the kids have everything that they need for school, homework, after-school activities and the ferrying to different places and the logistics of that, the purchasing of food, preparation of food, laundry, cleaning. I mean, these are all things that post-divorce wind up getting outsourced by men, and they actually have to pay for it. I mean, I'm a full-time working parent, and I also have to rely on childcare services to bridge that gap. And in typical heterosexual marriage where the woman is at home, she's doing all of these things. And also what I'm finding is in my practice, more and more, much more than when I started, however many years ago, we don't have to put a date on it, that I find that couples are coming to me and talking about one of the reasons for their separation being that there was a lot of pressure on the mom to go back to work and to contribute financially. And I think that until our society is set up in a way where all of those services that I just described are something that's community-based, that we all acknowledge has to be built into the way that we organize our entire society here in Canada, it is women who are going to do that labor, and they're not getting paid for it. So this idea that there's not a contribution that's being made through this labor, and we're not even talking about like the mental load. That's a whole other topic. I'm not even really discussing, this idea that
yes, because the mental load exists even if you're outsourcing the tasks.
Because someone has to be responsible for it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, somebody has to be.
Someone's scheduling the tutor.
Someone is lying in bed at night thinking about what the week looks like and what the logistics are that are involved, and are coordinating those logistics, whether it's between the parents or the kids or the school or the service providers. So
other parents,
for sure, family members, whatever your network is. And I think it's really also interesting that men that I work with, I've noticed in my practice post-divorce, are also noticing the mental load as it relates to their social lives. Because, when you get divorced, people rally around you, hopefully, and your support network is there for you. I think it's really important. But, 6 months later, a year later, I think that the men that I work with often notice that their social circle has gotten a little bit smaller, and there's not as much, on their social agenda, because that was also labor that was being taken care of by their unpaid spouse, stay-at-home spouse. There's a relationship between the spouse who has been able to accumulate wealth during the marriage through work outside of the home. There's a causal link between that accumulation of wealth and the unpaid labor of their stay-at-home spouse. We're in Quebec and in Canada in general, this idea that there's going to be a partition of assets at the end of the marriage, regardless of whose name the assets are in. So, in addition to partitioning some of the assets, there's going to be a redistribution of income post-divorce to compensate for the spouse who has less income.
This applies to people who are married.
This applies to people who are married. In other provinces, there's also provisions being made for unmarried spouses. But I think the point that I want to make about this is these regimes, these legal regimes, are complex.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily going to apply or going to have uniform application to everybody. What you mentioned earlier about people coming to see me in a moment of crisis is really true. I don't necessarily think that the legal advice that you get from an attorney about how the law of the land applies to you in a situation of divorce is only pertinent or relevant to you at the moment that you're getting divorced and you really are desperate. I think it's important to have these conversations and understand this at the moment that hopefully your marriage is going well and you and your spouse are really aligned and making decisions, informed decisions, understanding how the law applies to you at that moment. For me, that's health. That's part of a healthy partnership.
Right. I would agree. And do people ever consult you?
Yes.
Before? Or?
Yes. I mean, people consult me before marriage. It's one of my favorite things to do in my practice because I'll tell you a secret. A lot of divorce attorneys are actually very romantic people. And it's our one opportunity to sort of support romance and healthy marriage is the coaching that we do at the beginning of a marriage or pre-marriage in anticipation of a marriage. And some of those relationships have been really wonderful where people have come back to see me at different benchmarks in their lives. But I think that that's really smart. And I think that that is actually a great moment to have those conversations and decide how you're going to set up your lives. All those decisions are really consequential, not just in divorce, but in your marriage, in your life, how you set yourself up. And if you're not aiming for fairness and you feel like these decisions are just happening to you because you don't really have a choice, that to me is not a healthy partnership.
Right. And so you're talking about sharing some of the assets, but that is the default regime, right? So it is possible that people sign contracts before, I think during, right?
Yes.
Their
Pre-
marriage.
or post-nuptial agreements, yes.
Pre or post-nup agreements that will change the circumstances.
Yes.
And how often, like, how do you coach people through that
That's
process?
something that divorce attorneys do a lot. I do it a lot in my practice. I give counseling about pre- and post-nuptial agreements. We call them here marriage contracts.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think marriage contracts are bad. Oftentimes what marriage contracts do, certainly here in Canada, is they adopt the regime of separation as to property, which means whatever assets I accumulate in my name during the marriage are going to be mine alone and not subject to partition at the end of the marriage. And I also want to mention that all marriages end.
Yeah.
They either end through separation, divorce, or death. What I'm against is people signing them without really understanding what they mean and without carrying that knowledge through the decision-making they're doing during their marriage as a couple in terms of how they're organizing their finances. I mean, I certainly don't have to tell you, Lindsay, that, how you save your money and what you're doing with your money is a conversation that is not, I don't think, ever healthy for only one spouse to be making those decisions. It's a conversation.
Yeah. And being able to have that conversation requires full information.
Well, it also requires a healthy marriage. I mean, oftentimes people say to me, I can't discuss these things with my spouse. Our relationship is just too fragile. They'll get mad at me. I'm not really allowed to ask questions like this. I've been told, when I've suggested, well, why don't you go with your husband to the accountant to talk about these decisions that are being made with respect to, how you're declaring your income and what you're doing. And the answer is, I can't call the accountant. I'm not invited to those meetings. And if I tried to make my own appointment, I mean, it's just way too expensive and I can't do that. Meanwhile, your husband's going to the accountant, just go with him, I think that there's certain information that has to be discussed, that certain conversations that have to happen in a healthy marriage.
Yeah. And you hear the opposite too, right?
Right.
And we're being obviously extremely general here, but let's say the male spouse is inviting the female to the meetings and she doesn't want to go. I hear that so regularly as
I'm
well.
sure you do.
And I think that like on both sides, right? Push yourself to go whether or not you find it interesting, whether or not you think you're going to learn or need the information. I think what we're saying,
How much of that do you think is related to people's general anxiety about money?
Yes, it is.
I mean, I'm uncomfortable talking about money. It's certainly not something I was brought up to do.
Well, welcome.
You know, like when I'm meeting,
get you eventually.
Yeah. When I'm setting up the meeting with the bank, I'm like, how short can this meeting possibly be? You know, it's not always comfy. It's not always easy, and it's certainly easier to be avoidant.
Yes.
And if there's somebody who wants to unilaterally do all that stuff, sometimes it feels like the path of least resistance is to just let them do it.
Yeah.
But
totally.
I'm really hoping that anyone who's listening to us is getting the message that this is sort of not optional for a healthy marriage.
Right.
Like I think you have to have a seat. You belong in the room. Exactly. You have to be there for those discussions.
And I think the one of the really important pieces here is I know you have seen women come out the other side and be better off.
Yes.
They've avoided the entire time. They have not been part of the conversation the entire time, regardless of the information they end up finding out and how things go. Coming out the other side and having access to the information, having a team of professionals you don't mind speaking to, even when the subject matter is difficult, is so important and should never be something that we wait to happen to us.
I mean, I think that it's astonishing to me how many times people report to me that they were at the meeting with the financial planner, with the investment advisor, with the accountant, with the notary, and they left and they didn't understand. Men and women tell me that.
Yes.
Is it because they're disengaged from the conversation and they're abdicating the responsibility of understanding? Perhaps. But I also think it's like a systemic problem where either you're working with the wrong people, you're not asking questions, or your questions are not being honored. Your curiosity, your intellectual curiosity is not being honored. Like, trust me, if he gets it, you can get it. Like, there's nothing that your husband understands that you can't understand.
Yes, and with all due respect to my industry in my day life.
Yes.
I sometimes think that it's done by design.
I do too.
To use a lot of jargon.
Yes.
And make things sound complicated and brushed over in this way where you're not sure what the entry point for the question even is.
Yes.
So you really have to kind of take a step back, and I know that you've talked about this before, the power in almost playing dumb.
I say it all the time. Like, I often play dumb.
Yeah.
You know, I weaponize people's low expectations of me to my great advantage. And I say, oh, you know, that thing that you just said, I really didn't understand that. Can you slow down and explain it to me like I'm in kindergarten? Whether it's a financial concept, whether it's an investment concept, whether it's a legal concept. And I find that people are very disarmed when you come at them sort of asking to be taught something. Like, you're the expert. Please, you know, take the time and explain it to me.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also for me like a huge red flag in a marriage. If your intellectual curiosity is not being honored by your spouse, if you're being made to feel stupid that you don't understand something, and that you're supposed to just know without it ever having been explained to you.
By the way, I think it's a red flag for a professional you're working with as well.
1,000%.
Right? Anyone who's good at what they do and enjoys what they do wants you to understand how they're helping you.
Yes.
I think. And I've worked with women and watched their journey go from sitting beside the husband, not saying a word.
Correct.
To asking more questions than he is. And I have to say, the feeling I get from listening to these astute, insightful, important questions that they don't even like, most of the time, you don't even realize how good your questions are.
I could not agree with you more. I think that it's a known researched fact that women are better investors than men. They make better investment decisions. They are better at risk assessment.
We understand it differently.
I think that there's so much value that's being missed out on if you're not in the room when those decisions are being made. And
because your voice isn't there.
You have so much value. You have so much to add to the conversation.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think there's a big difference between delegating certain tasks to your spouse and abdicating all responsibility and mental space. I'm not saying that this is necessarily like how you want to spend your afternoon, like talking about your budget, talking about your finances, talking about your debt, talking about your investments. But these are conversations, you're never going to regret having these conversations, literally, ever. No. And I don't know about you, but there's tons of women that come into my office who don't know the answers to certain basic financial questions. Do you own your house? Yeah. Whose name is your house in?
Yeah.
Do you have debt?
Yeah.
Do you have a mortgage? Do you have a line of credit? Is it being used?
Yeah.
How much does your life cost? What's your burn rate on a monthly basis to pay for your house, your car, and the basic needs of your family? How much money does your spouse earn? Yeah. Does your spouse own businesses? Do you own any shares in those businesses? How are those businesses organized? Is any income being declared in your name, whether you work or not? So these are fundamental, basic questions that I think that everyone should know the answers to.
And if they haven't had these conversations yet, I feel like, go home.
I invite you to get on it.
And these are not supposed to be threatening conversations.
I mean, I don't think we can have this conversation without talking about the patriarchy. But I think that this paradigm that the man is the breadwinner and he is responsible for all the financial decision making, he is responsible for providing, and his worth towards his family and his wife is directly related to his ability to provide. I think that these very strict paradigms hurt men.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of men who I work with at the moment of divorce who are saying, I knew that I was trying to keep my marriage going by spending money on things, vacations, things, whatever. I was trying to keep us all together. And I knew that it wasn't going to work, but this is all I knew how to do. And I don't think that men having the sole pressure of providing and making all financial decisions is good for them or good for the marriage either.
I also think that it's worth saying that nobody is born with this knowledge.
No.
This is not an innate skill set.
No.
Everybody has to learn or they won't know. So I've also worked with couples where I can tell how much the husband knows.
Right.
And the wife is trusting the husband, but he is not necessarily that knowledgeable or experienced in the area of investment because he might be really, really good at something else, just like you are, just like she is.
Well, it's an unsafe assumption to think that if you don't know something that's important, that the guy who you've put in charge of it actually does know everything that there is to know about it. Like I'm also noticing that this expectation that you might have that if women are the ones with the financial wealth, the wealth in their couple, that is going to correspond to having more power, decision-making power, and control in their couple. And what I am finding is that is absolutely not the case. Because as I'm working more and more with really wealthy women, I'm noticing that wealthy women, in order to make their marriages to men work, in heterosexual marriages, obviously, they make themselves smaller. So in lots of ways, big and small, they make their successes smaller. They hide their success. They give up their decision-making power to their husbands.
Wow.
They check out of financial decision making and management of their own finances. And in order to keep the balance in their couple, which is very tenuous, made tenuous by the fact that they are the bigger earner, they wind up, I think, much more vulnerable to being in a seriously unhealthy or even abusive relationship.
Wow. That's so hard.
Well, it's really complicated because I don't think that all of this just comes from men earning more, although historically they have.
Okay, so but actually what that means, I think, what you're saying is that we said that the law compensates for unpaid labor right, upon divorce. But what if the larger earning spouse is also doing the unpaid labor?
Like I said, it makes the divorce very hard to resolve because men who are, the head of their family.
That feels like a no-win.
And the bigger earners in their family and have taken care of their stay-at-home wife for many, many years. At the end of a long traditional marriage, there's at least a baseline, acknowledgement by those men that they owe something to their wife, their long-term traditional wife. For women who are the bigger earners, it's not necessarily the case. They don't necessarily have such an easy time acknowledging that, especially if they were in an unhealthy relationship for many years.
So is there a piece of advice, or how would you advise women to kind of gain more agency if it isn't through earning money or earning more money? What's the best way to have agency? I guess it might be partnership. It's
to strive for partnership.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with asking questions.
Yeah.
And obviously, it sounds a little self-promotional to say that you can always go and see a lawyer for an hour and do a consultation and find out what your rights are.
Yeah.
But, that's not always accessible to everybody.
Right.
That is only accessible to people who have the privilege to be able to do that.
But I think of the fear that must exist for people who don't know the answer to, if I wanted to leave my marriage, where would I be? How do you, in order to make informed decisions, and of course we should, or we can work as hard, as possible to make things work successfully, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't also be informed.
I agree. And I don't, as a divorce attorney, I have an obligation when I'm meeting with someone to say, is there a chance of reconciliation here? Could you work on the marriage? Like, I don't think divorce attorneys are anti-marriage. Certainly I'm very pro partnership and very pro marriage or marriage-like relationships. I just think that there's incredible power in knowledge.
Yeah.
And so if you're asking me, what do I think the average woman could do to have a healthier partnership and a stronger partnership and be a stronger partner? I think it starts with asking questions. Like, forget going to a divorce attorney. Just ask questions in your couple.
Yeah.
And if your questions are not being honored, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
And there are ways to go get information if it's not being offered to you. You can ask to meet with the accountant. You can ask to meet with the bank.
Yeah.
You can do your own research.
If you are not sure if you've signed documents, for example, or if you've signed documents and you're not thrilled about what they say or what you think they might say because you're not entirely sure, I think it's worth saying that these can be changed.
Yes, there's nothing permanent about a prenup.
Right.
It can always be modified and it can always be amended, and it should be revisited over time and with changes. The prenup that you negotiate when you're 25 and have nothing and, you've only been with your spouse for a year is very different than the prenup that you might negotiate 10 years into a marriage with 3 kids, where you've given up your career in order to stay home and raise those kids. And your husband has done very well. And it could be as simple as, how much are you investing in your RRSPs this year? Could we put the same amount in my name?
Yeah.
How much do you have in an investment portfolio? Like, could we discuss putting a certain amount in my name as you're making investments in your name? So I think it can start small, those conversations.
Even, do you ever see examples of spouses who are not doing paid labor, but where there's like a sharing of resources such that the spouse doing the unpaid labor does have an ability to save and invest, to like think about money in that way?
Yes. I mean, I think what's interesting is when we talk about budgets.
Yes.
And that's very basic, right? Most couples talk about what their household budget is going to be and discuss, what their monthly spending is going to be on fixed costs versus variable costs. And women actually, I always joke, like, I'm head of procurement in my couple, which means that I do all the shopping and I'm in charge of ordering things on, line and whatever. Women have a lot of...
And you're not talking about the fun shopping, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about...
I'm talking about the fun and unfun, actually.
Okay.
But I think women have a lot of decision-making power when it comes to purchasing.
Yes.
But they don't necessarily get involved in the conversation about the above that level is also like income and assets, right? So it's about talking about, as part of our budget, like, am I saving?
Yeah.
What are we saving? And what are we saving in my name?
Yeah.
Or in our name jointly versus just in his name?
And how exciting it can be to discuss what we're saving for.
Correct.
Right? Like, what do we want? What
are our goals?
Yeah.
Because money should be freedom. Yes. Money should be giving you more happiness and joy and freedom in your life.
Yeah.
And that's something that a couple should be, I think, building together.
Yes. And enjoying.
Together and talking about, yes, exactly, what's valuable to them, you know, and those value discussions, if it's okay for him to spend money on golf and watches and scotch, why shouldn't it also be okay for her to spend money on family vacations?
Yeah.
And I also think that there's this idea that the wife's spending on the kids is like her spending, which is so perverse to me. I mean, like the uniforms and the school lunches and the activities and the childcare, that's not the wife's spending, that's the family's spending. So I think discussing budgets could also be a really powerful entry point into having more knowledge and more agency and decision-making about finances in your couple. Yeah.
You said something to me, and I'm just pivoting because I still find it to be like, I think there's a common misconception that you pointed out about a marriage being bad and that's somehow relating to the outcome in divorce. Meaning that somehow if you feel like your marriage was terrible, right, then you are going to have like that is ammunition for or evidence or somehow some kind of that gives weight to what your result will be in the division of that marriage or the end.
So I think that one of the things that I, as a divorce attorney want people to know about divorce in Canada is that a lot of people come to me at the end of a divorce in a moment of high stress, high conflict, high crisis. And when we start talking about financial entitlements and what to do with the kids, it seems that they're not able to make the separation between how mistreated they were in their marriage and what their expectation is of fairness with respect to financial settlement of a divorce and also, what we're going to do with respect to custody and the children's schedule. And what I want people to know and understand is that our court system is totally disinterested in who the good guy was during the marriage and who the bad guy was during the marriage. Ugh. And if you show up in court arguing...
I almost feel like you need to repeat that because I really think that is counter to what we naturally...
Yes. And people often are very angry with me when I say this to them. They're very disappointed. It doesn't give me pleasure to tell them this.
Yeah.
But Our justice system is interested in fairness and compensation when it comes to finances, according to our rules. And with respect to the kids, the best interest of the children.
Right.
They are not interested in how poorly you were treated during your marriage. Do you want to know what the legal consequence is for having been poorly treated during your marriage?
Tell me.
It's getting divorced. You aren't married anymore.
Uh-huh.
That's the consequence in law. Your bad behavior, or what we call marital fault, the big ones would be infidelity, mental or physical cruelty, financial malfeasance, whatever. Those things are causes for divorce. Those are grounds to get your divorce. But they, maybe save and except for financial malfeasance, they're not going to impact what you're owed.
Wow.
Or what the custody should be.
Wow.
The way you've been mistreated in your marriage is not going to have an impact on what you're owed at the end of your relationship. And, with very, very, very few exceptions, which I don't think we even discuss, but it's so hard for people to accept, because oftentimes at the end of a really bad marriage, you want to litigate and you want to air out and have someone pronounce who's to blame.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what our court system is for. It's not set up to do that. The other thing I think I would really love people to think about, especially at the moment when they're choosing a spouse, is, it's wonderful to think about what it would be like to be married to somebody. But I think you should also think about what it would be like to be divorced from them.
Human nature and our ability to irrationally think, this won't apply to me.
Yes.
Regardless of the odds,
yes.
It won't happen to me.
Yes.
I have a good one. It's incredible, the narratives that we tell ourselves, I think, to avoid uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, and the rationalization that we go through, or that we do to ourselves.
Yeah.
I think for me, this idea, I've seen them be terrible to other people, their family members, their, ex-partners, their friends. But they would never be like that with me. They're not like that with me. That's a red flag. Yeah. If the person is kind of a love-hate kind of a person, and right now you're receiving all the love, unfortunately, when you separate, that emotion, that really strong, intense, passionate love has to get converted into something. And sometimes it gets converted into hate. And you have to picture what it would be like to co-parent after separation or divorce with that person. Because co-parenting requires a lot of collaboration and a lot of mutual respect and a lot of communication. If you're not going to have that with that person, you're basically signing up to be parenting in opposition with someone for the rest of your life.
That's like a really uncomfortable thought experiment.
It's a really uncomfortable thought experiment, but it's one that I think will serve people well.
Yeah.
And I think the discomfort of it is why people ignore this advice.
Yeah.
But it's really important. It's really important. And I would tell this to women in business too. Think about who you're working with.
Yeah.
Because when things are going well, it's going well. But when things are going poorly, what is it going to be like?
Yeah. Our inability or lack of desire, I think, to try to picture beyond the excitement and the good that we see often initially in situations, I think is, it could lead to surprises down the road. And it's always 100%. A surprise, right? No one ever thinks that their life, that their marriage is going to end up in ways that I know you see all the time.
But I also think, there's this idea that our interests, we're a family. We take care of one another. I'm taking care of him. He's going to take care of me. And I think that could really work so long as everybody's interests align.
Yeah.
But the second you're being separated, the second you're getting separated or divorced, your interests are no longer aligned.
Yeah.
And whatever he and you both had together, it now has to be cut in half.
Oh, this is also such a good point, Carly.
Which for a lot of people,
yeah,
most people means that the life that you could afford when you had 100% of that financial pie to devote to your kids' needs and your family's needs could afford you a certain life. Now that same pie has to be cut in half, and now you have to pay for two lives.
Yeah.
2 lives.
Yeah.
And 2 households, which requires like the doubling up of certain expenses. And it becomes a zero-sum game.
We haven't ever discussed this question before, but what do you say to people who want to get divorced but feel like they can't afford to?
That's a huge demographic. I think that the world has gotten incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And financially difficult.
Yeah.
It's really challenging. I sometimes want to turn those negatives into a positive and say, there are parts of your marriage that you maybe would want to change, that you're not feeling fulfilled. Mm-hmm. But a good financial partnership is not nothing. Mm-hmm. A good financial partnership is a good base, at least, to start with. If you are both taking on your division of labor and your responsibilities are kind of fair. Mm-hmm. Maybe start looking into other ways of fulfilling those needs that aren't being met in your marriage.
Yes. Yes.
And focusing on the positive of being in a positive financial partnership. I don't think that that's a small thing. Mm-hmm. But I do think that when you're setting up your financial lives, you have to think about, am I taking on so much that this would be impossible to unwind if for some reason I was alone? Because you're going to be vulnerable if you're not.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I say that I think it's really important for women to have set aside, first of all, their own bank accounts. Yes. I mean, if you only have joint bank accounts, you're vulnerable. And you should have your own bank account that has a certain amount of money in it that could cover you for a certain number of months. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's important for all kinds of reasons. It's important for you to have independence. It's important for you to have safety. And it's important in case of an emergency.
I also think it's worthwhile having your own credit card.
Building credit is huge.
Yeah.
So many women at the end of a long-term traditional relationship, in addition to the fact that they never had their own bank accounts or their own investment accounts, they also never had their own credit. They never, if their name wasn't on the mortgage or if they didn't have their own credit card or they were just a secondary card holder on their husband's credit card, they haven't been building credit. So what's going to happen when it's time for you to go sign a lease for a new apartment? Yeah. You are not going to pass a credit check.
Yeah, I think that's a big blind spot. I think people don't realize how important credit is, and that if you have nothing in your name, you're really starting from behind.
And I would also say I'm not against debt.
No.
I think that there are lots of ways in which debt is part of a healthy financial plan. Mm-hmm. But there are all kinds of ways that debt could come up and bite you in the tushy if you don't understand how debt is being used in your marriage. Mm-hmm. If all of your expenses are going on a line of credit and are eating away at the equity in your house, if instead of having a conventional mortgage where you're paying down capital, you only have a line of credit where you're paying the minimum interest every month and you're not building equity.
Feel like we need to address one more thing before we really fully run out of time, and that is not reading documents you sign.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Or not understanding documents you sign, or giving up the power to actually have to sign. This seems to happen a lot more commonly than I would have guessed. And even people who know better are doing it.
Yes.
So what would you say, what would you leave everyone with? I mean, women, men, but often, unfortunately, I think this happens more to women.
I think it happens to everybody, to be honest. I think we're in a sort of convenience
Yes.
a convenience society, and I think
DocuSign, click, click.
Electronic signatures are super convenient.
Yeah.
Giving somebody else a power of attorney so that they can sign with the bank or when it's time to buy your house. I mean, I had a woman who came to see me and said, I was in the hospital with a family member when our closing on our house was happening, so I didn't go to the notary, and I let him go to the notary for us. And then she found out that she wasn't on the deed, and he had signed and purchased the house only in his name. So I feel like...
And it's complicated because a power of attorney is a very useful document.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's very convenient, all these tools that we have in our modern society and that professionals use as a matter of course.
Yeah.
I'm interested in... I want you to know how many people come to see me and say, I signed this document, it says XYZ, and I read the document and it says something completely different.
Wow.
So it's not enough to have someone explain to you what the document says. You have to read it and ask questions and make sure that it says what you think it says.
Could you put it into AI now?
Could you put it into AI? You could. Would I rely exclusively on AI to make those kinds of decisions? No, I wouldn't.
No.
Would I put it into AI before the meeting I have coming up to sign something and asking AI to give me a summary of what it says and 5 questions that I could ask the professional before I sign it to make sure I understand? Sure, I would do that.
These are good tools that we have now.
Yeah, I would do that for sure.
Yeah.
But then I would actually have to have the follow-up conversation before I sign.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we all want to be able to trust the person who's telling us what that document says.
Whether it's your spouse or a professional.
Yeah. But
my policy is trust but verify. Trust but verify.
I like that a lot.
And you know what? If you can't, you've got to rely on your own intelligence to get you through.
Yeah.
Like everybody else's advice is really great. AI is great.
Yeah.
Working with the right professionals is great.
Yeah.
Having a husband or a spouse that you trust is great.
Yeah.
But, I also am big on, you might not ever be the smartest person in the room, but you could be the most prepared.
Yeah.
You could do the research.
Yeah.
And ask the right questions.
And also, we're all so much more qualified. I mean, we've been to law school and I've studied money, but it's not that hard in the sense that, you'll get so much more than you realize just from the uncomfortable exercise of reading the document or looking over the statement, the tax return, just like it.
Look, at my core, I'm a Jewish girl who studied humanities, who likes to read. I am not in a better position to understand this stuff than anybody else. Mm-hmm. I'm just a nerdy girl that likes to read. Mm-hmm. I am not trained or educated in finance. And everything that I've learned from asking questions in moments when I might have even looked stupid in a room full of people who seemed way more important and more informed than me. Mm-hmm. And then listened to the answer and asked follow-up questions until I fully understood. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm here. That's the only reason why I'm here.
I love it so much because the incremental exercise or experience of doing that day in,
that practice,
day out, over and over is how you accumulate knowledge and experience and abilities and get rid of some of that fear and some of that overwhelming anxiety that necessarily comes with these topics.
Lean into the discomfort of these conversations with your spouse, with the professionals around you.
Yes.
Lean into the discomfort because that is how you're going to walk away feeling, oh, I actually do understand this and I am making the right decision.
Yes, and know that you're not alone and know that no one will be unimpressed.
No.
Right? By you
asking good questions.
Doing this, leaning in, taking it
Doing
on.
what you have to do to understand.
Yeah. Carly, you professionally and personally feel like the perfect fit in terms of a team of experts and leaders who are part of this Powership collective. You've been with me on this journey since the very beginning. And I think you are so well placed to help describe and explain why this is important to you and why you keep showing up when I call.
Where do I need to be? I'll be there. For me, what I found amazing about Powership is this idea that there are so many women in our community who are doing incredible things. Mm-hmm. And to feel connected to that is really exciting. Mm-hmm. And it feels like a leveling up.
Yes.
You know, like being in your 40s and seeing your network doing exciting things and being able to support your network. It feels like everybody is leveling up together.
Yes. And I think what's really exciting to me for you and I is that people like to share tips about maybe their diet or their exercise or their health regime. But in our areas,
yes,
there are a lot of tips to be shared.
I so agree.
And we don't talk about them enough.
I so agree. And I sort of feel like, you know, whether it's someone who I follow who's an expert in fitness or who's an artist or who's, you know, working in wellness or whatever, cooking, whatever, the women that I admire, what I would love to do is get them in a room and ask them, how did you find your accountant? How did you find your financial advisor? Like, how do you know what you want to do with respect to investments? How do you know, how did you set yourself up? How did you find your team?
Yeah.
You know, that to me, and women, powerful, strong, successful women are not asked those questions enough.
Yeah.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
How did you find a mentor?
Yeah.
How did you become a mentor?
Yeah.
How did you pass it on to somebody else? What decisions are you making in your business to support other women? Mm-hmm. What are you doing to become the boss that you always wished you had, that you never did? What are you doing to change, you know, things about the professional culture in your industry that hurt you when you were coming up?
I was so inspired by someone who told me that when they found themselves going through a divorce, one of the first things you said to them was, build your team.
Build your team.
You need a team of professionals around you, female or male, but don't be scared to use your instinct to choose people that you like to work with.
Totally. I mean, you know, you can pick professionals that you want to work with based on who your peers are, who you find inspiring, who you would love to just get on a call with or go for lunch with.
Yeah.
Like, those are the people that you should be working with. Those are the relationships that you should be cultivating. Those are the people you should be referring to your friends.
Yes.
It's so vital, and it's one of the most exciting, fun parts about my job, but also working in Powership, is developing that network and seeing how many brilliant women there are in our city, in our community, who are doing amazing things professionally and just in their community, and who are passionate and who want to learn and who want to talk about how to be more successful together.
This is You Belong in the Room, a podcast from Powership. If this conversation resonated with you, please feel free to share it. I know these are conversations that we all need to be having. If you subscribe, you won't miss any of our new episodes, and you can check out more information about the upcoming symposium on our website, powershipcollective.com, or follow us on Instagram at Powership Collective.